Welcome to the Art of Plenty. What do you do when your kids get cut from a sport team that you think they should have made? That is the topic of today. And if you are a parent whose kids play sports, then you've probably experienced this. And if you haven't, well, that's incredible too. You probably have a phenomenal athlete for a child. But it is an experience that I have had as a parent several times. 2 times in particular stand out to me, and both of those circumstances were extremely difficult for me to get over. I'm not going to go into too much detail around what was happening in the situation because it really doesn't necessarily matter, because it won't impact the story. But here are the details that I want you to know. In both of these situations, where these 2 different kids got cut from teams, I felt 100% that they were wronged, and I felt like my kid deserved or should have been on those teams. And both of my kids in those situations responded to differently. Now, there have been other situations in our life as a family where a kid has gotten cut from a sports team, and I don't have that feeling. So that clues me in that maybe I don't have some type of parental bias about what's happening, because there's been times when my kids have got cut from a team, have not made a team, and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense to me. It isn't a fit for this season, or the kid's just not ready for this level of competition, or whatever it is. It never sat ill with me, not like these situations. And the 2 situations that I'm talking about were with 2 different kids, and they responded very differently. One of the kid, it was maybe an hour or 2 after finding out that that kid wasn't going to be on the team, that the kid was moving forward and already thinking about the next thing. It didn't seem to settle in that person in the same way that it did with the other kid. The other kid, for 3 to 4 months, was upset and cried for 3 to 4 months after being cut from the team. It was extremely difficult. And maybe the other kid that didn't have that same emotional reaction, maybe they were disguising some of their emotion, but I have to take that kid at their word when they said, no, I'm okay about this, and I'm moving forward, and I'm excited to be on a different team. And I have to look at that and take that kid where they're saying they're at, rather than thinking that perhaps they're not telling me the truth or they're really struggling, and then look for signs that they really are okay. And after that had happened with that kid, which was a while ago, the signs were that kid was in fact okay, and it really wasn't that big of a deal. Now, I want to avoid thinking about the political side of things in sports. But in this situation, in both of these situations, I couldn't do it. And I also, as a parent, I don't want to be judgmental about the decisions that other people are making. But I'm struggling because in both of those situations, I wanted to find someone to blame for the situation that my kid was in, because it felt like an injustice was happening to them, that they were not being treated fairly or in a way that was serving them. And I really struggle with injustice because I have a compass that errs on the side of things need to be done right. Now, regardless of what that definition of right is, I think things should be right. And my justice meter is pretty high. It's one of those value things for me that really comes to play in different situations. I live in a small community. So what that means is, in the realm of kids sports, is that a lot of people know each other, and a lot of people talk about what's happening, and a lot of people talk about the sports. And I think a lot of families, a lot of parents feel similar in the way that I do. And what I mean by feeling similar is that there's an emotional component when it involves your kids. When it's me, I'm more able to deal with that disappointment that I may experience if something doesn't go the way that I think it's going to go. But when my kids come into the equation, I have a much more difficult time to keep my emotions in check if I think that something is happening to them that I don't think is right. And I think the part that is really frustrating about that is there's nothing that I can do, and there was nothing I could do in either of those situations to actually create change or to make the situation different. I couldn't change the situation that my kids found themselves in. I could not change the outcome of what team that they were going to be on or the team that they were going to be working with. And that's an unusual feeling for me because a lot of times I feel quite competent, and I have been competent in what I've been able to negotiate for my kids. So when it doesn't go that way and I realize I have no control, it really stands out to me and it's really difficult for me. So the injustice of this really rubbed me. But here's the deal. I'm making the assumption that the people who are making these decisions are acting in the interests of one or two groups, one or two people, one or two parties, rather than on a matter of principle. And as you know, because I just said, the justice piece rubs me. So if I feel like the situation, people aren't acting with integrity or acting out of a matter of principle, but they're acting for the interests of a small group, that really bothers me. But here's the deal. How do I know? How do I know how they are making that decision? Because just because I feel that way and just because it looks that way to me, that doesn't mean that that's what is actually happening. I have to somehow suspend my judgment and assume the best in them. And truthfully, in both of those situations, I was not able to do that. I was not able to assume the best of them. And because I couldn't assume the best of them, I couldn't get over it quickly. And I am a woman who gets over things quickly. They often don't sit with me for a very long time. I can put things behind me and move through very fast. And this was one of those situations where, because I couldn't assume the best in them, I actually wasn't able to move forward. And I also had concern that if I brought it forward to anybody, there could be additional negative repercussions for my kids. And I most certainly did not want that to happen for a few reasons. In kids' sports, you do not want to be known as a difficult parent. But both of these situations created a lot of angst for me. I was trying to figure out, how am I going to work through this as a parent? Because I know that my kids look to me and they look to my response to see how I'm handling a situation and to see how I'm moving through something. Because when I move through something successfully, it creates a model for them to move through things in the future. And they also are looking to me to see, how should I, them as the child, respond? Oh, mom is responding this way. Okay, I'm going to pattern how I'm responding after how my mom is responding. So I found myself in this situation where I really wanted to be mindful of how I was acting, how I was talking, and how I was feeling, because I didn't want to set them up to make it more difficult for them in the moment and in the emotions and in the rest of the year as they continued in their sports. Here is one of the things I got to. If it had been my kid in that position or on that team, that would have meant that another kid wasn't in that position or on that team. And I have to sit with that, because when I think about that, I think there are other kids who also equally want to be on this team, who have also been putting the time in, have been putting the energy in, have been putting the work in. And who am I to say that my kid deserves a spot more than another kid? And the next step that I get to after that is it's the coaches, it's the leaders' prerogative to choose. It's their team. It's their group of athletes. They have to make decisions for how they want the entire team to work, how they want the entire team to function. And they're seeing things that I'm not necessarily seeing because I'm looking at an individual child, not the group as a whole. And yeah, I'm looking around like, oh, are they better than them? Oh, are they better than them? Right? So there's some of that, but I can't do that from the same perspective as a coach because I'm not building that team. So at some point, I have to relinquish my own judgment and move forward in that principle that they're making the best judgment call that they can. I have to suspend my personal judgment. And I've really, really had to let this one go. In both of these situations, I really had to work hard to let it go. Because in the past, I have seen it where other parents have been upset with how something's rolled out. They don't necessarily like their kids' placement. You know, this comes up in dance, this comes up in hockey, this comes up in every sport with every kid. That other parents don't necessarily like what's happening. And I've watched how their kids will pick up on what the parent's saying. And then that kid could have been perfectly happy with where they were placed. But because of their parents' disappointment, the kid slides into disappointment. And I know that I don't want that for my kids. I need to keep my emotions and my opinions in check so that I don't make it worse for my kids and so that I set them up to work through these difficult situations in their life. I remember hearing Gordon Neufeld speak quite a while ago. He is a child attachment specialist and a researcher. He's a published author. An incredible perspective on raising kids. And one of the things that really stood out to me, and there was a lot that stood out when I went to this lecture, but one of the things that he was talking about was, I believe the phrase he used was tears of futility. And what it meant, or what he was saying, is when your kid or when a child has an experience where they do not get what they want and they're overcome with tears and they're left to cry and cry about it, but nobody is rescuing them. And what I mean by rescuing them, it's not that somebody isn't comforting them or supporting them in their tears. It means that you're not removing them from the situation so that they no longer have something to cry about. So in the example with sports, if I have a kid that is crying because they haven't made the team and I change the situation so that they're on the team, I am removing their tears of futility because their tears have become something. It's become getting onto the team. It hasn't been futile. And when a child has tears of futility, so tears that don't result in what it is that they want, it creates a developmental stage in them. It's a marker that they reach. And when kids have that developmental milestone where they cry tears of futility, it sets them up in the future to be able to manage multiple contrary emotions at the same time. This is a huge developmental milestone for kids because what that looks like later on in life is you feel so sad that you didn't make the team, but you feel so much joy that your friend did. So you have contrary emotions in that moment of feeling a lot of joy and a lot of excitement, but also a lot of sadness and a lot of disappointment and possibly anger. So by having experiences in life where kids cry tears of futility, it enables them in the future to carry more than one and have contrary emotions in the same situation. And that is an incredible thing that I do not want to hold back from my kids. So when I think about these situations, especially the one who actually cried for months on end, that is the thing that I'm bringing to the forefront of my mind, that there are things at work in my kid's life, that these real experiences of not making the team and of mom not being able to solve it and having to live with not having something that they really wanted and had worked for, is doing something in them that no other circumstance would have the ability to do in that moment. Yeah, there's going to be other experiences that are similar that are going to create an opportunity for them to become who they're meant to be. But this is the type of situation that builds resilience. And I have to go there. And that is how I'm managing being disappointed about them not being on the team. Because I don't know how their life is going to roll out. I do not know what this circumstance is going to create in terms of future opportunities. And even though I wanted them to make those teams and I thought that it was the best thing for them and I thought that they deserved to be on those teams, I have to let that go, knowing that even though it did not work out the way that I thought it was going to, and it did not work out the way that I wanted it to, something good, something better is going to come out of this. Because the most important thing is not making the sports team. Even though right now, and when those things happened, it was the most important thing to them. But in the long run, there are many more things that are going to matter more. There are many more difficult situations that my kids are going to face in life. And these experiences are giving them something that they can draw on so that when they face difficulty, when they face situations where they're not in control and they can't shift things and it doesn't matter how hard they work, they don't get what they want, they will have some real life experience and skills to draw from that will help pull them through in those situations. And that is something to be thankful for and something to celebrate. Even just talking this through again, because I have been working this in my brain, and I worked this in my brain for so long after these two circumstances. But sharing this with you has really solidified to me that I've let it go. And that's the beautiful thing about talking about these things with others. So I would encourage you, if you're working through a situation like this, that this is something that you talk through with and share with a friend or your partner, so that it settles deeper into your spirit. There's something amazing when we talk about things, how the learning increases for us. Thank you for joining into this conversation today. I'd appreciate it if you subscribed. I'd appreciate if you liked it. I'd appreciate if you reviewed it. And I appreciate if you share it. This is The Art of Plenty, where we talk about all of those things that make life beautiful, that make life a life of abundance. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you tuned in today. This is meant to be entertainment. If you're feeling like you need real help with your parenting, please seek professionals in your community. This is not meant to replace professional advice. Have a beautiful day.